We got a doozy today. HBO and George have been going back and forth a little bit. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this all started with George's blog post as he criticized certain aspects of Season 2 of House of the Dragon. It starts off with George talking about blood and cheese and how he thinks the moment in the books was much more powerful. Which, to his credit, it was. It was much more brutal in the books, especially making Helena choose between her sons. Not to mention the death itself. But me personally, I think Blood and Cheese was handled well for the most part, as there are serious restrictions to what type of violence you could depict upon a child. And that makes sense for the limitations of that form of media. You could just simply get away with a lot more in the books as opposed to actually showing it on the screen. Although I do think they could have done a better job with the character development of Helena, which is one of my bigger criticisms of Season 2. I feel like after Blood and Cheese, she's literally just chopped liver. But with that all being said, I still think they captured the dark and brutal aspects of that situation. Which it seems like George agrees with my assessment. As he said it himself, he can see both sides of the argument. George R.R. Martin goes on to talk about Malor and how he's been pretty much written out of the show behind his back, as he was reassured that he would be introduced in Season 3. But now it doesn't seem like that is the case. This is a huge moment as George practically just leaked this onto the internet, and I highly doubt he consulted HBO about this, which is probably what led to HBO's response, that and George's criticisms of the writer himself. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's get back to his blog. The last thing I want to mention that I found interesting was how George talked about a butterfly effect, and how removing Malor will have some serious implications for the show moving forward. He goes into detail on how this certain event regarding this character creates this domino effect that results in a ton of shit happening. I won't say what he wrote in his blog, mainly because it is a complete and utter spoiler for the future seasons of House of the Dragon. So if you want to see what George wrote, his blog's in the link in my description below. But the reason why I found this so interesting was because I mentioned a butterfly effect in my first video criticizing the House of the Dragon. But mine was more directed towards Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship and how each of the characters were changed drastically. In the books, their vitriolic hatred for one another and their ambition was at the heart of the Dance of the Dragons. And changing something like that has some serious implications for the future seasons. And I warned everybody that even though Season 2 has a lot of good moments still, there are red flags emerging, and I feel like these red flags are only going to get worse as time goes on. And it looks like George and I share a similar opinion, as he says at the end of his blog that there are larger and more toxic butterflies to come. Now finally, let's talk about HBO's response, and honestly, it's nothing really interesting. It's your prototypical corporate PR safe statement. They basically just said that the creators and writers of House of the Dragon are super big fans of Fire and Blood, but they had to make some changes to make the show work. Now, I agree, and I even gave the example of Blood and Cheese where the changes were necessary. But there are so many other changes that don't make sense and are creating more problems than solutions. And I think George recognizes that, which is why he spoke out. Even though he should be writing the goddamn Winds of Winter, but I get his frustration. A lot of people are saying that this is HBO's way to do a soft check towards George, where they're basically saying, hey, you wrote Fire and Blood, but House of the Dragon is ours. Which sadly, we are seeing more and more of this, where we're taking original IPs like Star Wars, for example, and changing it into something that's hardly even recognizable. And I'll end this video like I ended my review of House of the Dragon Season 2. I pray that this show does not go the route that I think it will. I pray to anything and everything that won't happen. But I have a really bad feeling that it will. But yeah, that's it. That's everything I wanted to talk about with this situation. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below what I should do next. I could do anime, shows, movies, games, whatever. But again, thank you so much for watching.